So from the bowls of Bengal to the ragi in the Gurdwara, from the potter in Kumartoli to the weavers in Benares and the bead workers in Gujarat, to the Langas and the Manganias here in Rajasthan, all of these people make up the cultural industry here in India, and that industry is going to be the next sunshine industry of the country. Most governments have no idea about the wealth and the contribution of the arts to society. Our estimation is that over 400 million people in some way benefit from the arts. In mostly agrarian economies, be it in Rajasthan or Madhya Pradesh or Gujarat or Orissa or Bengal, you'll see between harvests, a lot of the folks do something that's artistic. They will weave, they'll create stuff, they will paint a pud, they will be involved in some kind of artistic contribution. And during famines and floods, they leave their states and go out to another state to be able to earn a secondary income to contribute to their family. The world over, the creative industries contributes largely to local GDPs. If you look at London's West End or New York's Broadway, London's West End contributes about £9 billion of additional income into London's economy, and New York's Broadway contributes about $13 billion into New York's economy. At the Edinburgh Festival, which is one of the world's largest festivals, which spreads over 5 weeks, this year, 2017, £275 million of additional spend was contributed to Edinburgh's economy. In Jaipur itself, in January, a few days away from here, at our annual Zee Jaipur Literature Festival, some years ago when we did a survey, we realized that the contribution to Jaipur's local economy over 5 days was about 40 to 50 crores just in that period, because you have such a large number of people who fly into the city, and everybody from the rickshaw driver to the jutti maker to the hotels and restaurants and the cars and the tourist people, everybody earns from a festival. And yet governments continue to look at the creative arts sector as a handout, as a dein. They don't look at it as a contribution. Why not? India today has 1.3 billion people. We have creative energy in our DNA. From the cradle to the grave, we have some form of art and entertainment. We sing and dance our way through life on every occasion, across religious divides, across caste and economic divides. We know that we celebrate the arts. The larger festivals, the Durga Pujas, the Navratras, the Ganesh Pujas, the Holies, all of these contribute in some way to not just our creative insight, but to local economies. And yet, in these 70 years since India's independence, no government has thought it fit to do any kind of enumeration of the contribution of this industry to India's GDP. If you look around us today, Nitin's piece of art, the TEDx logo, your chairs that you're sitting on, the headwear that you're wearing, the red t-shirt that you're wearing, all of this is design and also forms part of the creative industry sector. All around us. In India, we are steeped in design. You will hear some of our speakers immediately after me looking at the incredible wealth of traditional art that we have that is so amazing, because it represents a tradition, a form, a culture, and it tells you a story. Some years ago, I remember in Dantewada, we had set up something called the Kahani Festival, and much of what we do when we do our festivals across the world is that we look at places in conflict. So Egypt, South Africa, Israel, Dantewada. And the reason we looked at Dantewada is we realized that this was in the midst of the Maoist belt, as you all know, in a place that very little gets to, in a place where young people are growing up without any access to either their own traditional art and craft, and certainly nothing that comes in mainstream. We brokered a deal between the government and the Naxalites, saying that on that weekend that we were doing the Kahani festival, that there would be peace and nobody would have any encounters, nobody would be shooting each other. And we bussed in kids from 100 kilometer radius. So about 7,000 kids came in each day over the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. These were kids who had never ever seen a teacher in their school. They used to go to their school to have a midday meal, but they didn't have a teacher because teachers were too frightened of going out to teach there. And they came into a place, and of course, in our ignorance, we sort of said, what do we take there? Let's take them stories of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata and, blah, blah, blah. Not realizing that when the storyteller started telling them the stories of the Ramayana and Mahabharata, which we are so familiar with, they had no idea. But what they did know was their own stories, the stories of their trees, of their forests, of their rivers, of their stones, of their gods, of their customs, and of their traditions. And the wealth of India lies in these stories, in our diversity. Each of you sitting in this room comes from a completely different part of the world, because every 100 kilometers in India, everything changes. The way we speak, the way we dress, what we eat, the way we eat it, the way we wake up, the way we sleep. Everything changes because we are such an incredibly diverse country. And yet at one level, and the onslaught of Bollywood, perhaps we're all becoming, in one grain, in one shade. And that perhaps is a big challenge into the future. Where do ideas come from? Ideas don't necessarily only come from a book that you're reading or a textbook or a lecture. Ideas come from people, each of you. Each of the 1.3 billion people from India have an idea. And why? What's unique about it? Because unlike in the West, where there are very safe societies, this tin of nuts has nuts in it, this bottle of milk has milk in it, so beware because of the allergies, etc. Mind the gap between the train and the platform. In India, every second, we're having to work to survive. Jugaad, the big economic concept that we have, as we all know. What does Jugaad do? Jugaad makes sure that when a spaceship doesn't go up, you'll have somebody run across, open the door, wire something up, and the spaceship will go up. If it was anywhere else, you'd have a committee formed, they'd inspect, they'd have a report, they'll have a second report, blah, blah, blah. But Jugaad, not in its short-term reference, but in its long-term, has a lot to offer. Because we as Indians are able to think outside of the box. Because just to get your gas cylinder or to get your Aadhaar card, or not to get your Aadhaar card, depending on which side of the divide you're sitting today, each of these things require us to work around the system. And the minute you start working around the system, you're going to be inventive. So you send somebody from Bihar, who we all think is, Bihar, oh my God, they don't know anything. You send them to NASA in America, and they will be able to single-handedly send that shuttle out into space, because they have that ability to be able to think outside of the box. So what does culture do for us? Culture creates that platform. It gives us an identity, it roots us. Today when you look at, I'm sure all of you have some NRI family friend, when they come back somewhat confused about whether they're American or British or Caribbean or New Zealander or Australian, and they come back here and they just love being amongst their cousins, being fed, being shown the great palaces and forts of this beautiful city. They are confused because their roots are somewhat in two places. Their parents keep telling them that, no, you're Indian and you must speak this language and eat that, don't go out with that boy or don't go out with that girl because that's terrible, that's not part of your culture. And yet when they come back here, they have a completely different experience. We as people in India tend to adapt. We adapt very quickly. We're able to think ahead, we're able to think fast. The arts industry, as it continues to grow, and we've been seeing that, even if you look at the city of Jaipur, 10 years ago, if we had done a dipstick survey of should we set up a literature festival in Jaipur, we would have been laughed out of hearth and home because everybody would have said, Jaipur, no way, nobody will read a book. And I remember standing at Diggy Palace in the Darbar Hall at 9 o'clock in the morning on a cold winter day at the first Jaipur Literature Festival, wondering, log aayenge? And if they come, will they be enough to fill the Darbar Hall, which was 240 chairs at that point of time? 10 years down the line, 450,000 people line up at 7:30 in the morning and they come through. What are we building? We're building a brand, but we're building a brand which is based on culture. We're building a brand of ideas. We're building a brand of knowledge and excitement. You can sit on the lawns of Diggy Palace in a chair and you can travel the world everywhere between Wellington and Vancouver and not move an inch. You can learn about different people's histories and philosophies, their sociology, the way of life, what they wear, what they think. Everything that gives you a window into another culture. In India, 70 years ago, when we were divided, every country or every civilized country at that point of time, including America and Britain, said they will not survive because they are so diverse and they're so divided. And they bet on Pakistan, which had a very focused religious direction, and they said that will bind them together. 70 years later, we have survived in spite of all of this. Why? Because we understand diversity, or we used to understand diversity. All the way from the northeast to the south, from the east to the west, we have an incredible array of amazing built heritage, intangible heritage, and tangible heritage. Our built heritage is one of the reasons why this festival had come to Jaipur to begin with. Because at that point of time, when John and Faith Singh had come out to Edinburgh in 2001 to see what we were doing there, which was basically working with the crafts and the arts and looking at a way to be able to create value in built heritage, they said they wanted to do that here because of many of the old Havelis were being torn down to be or being converted into other spaces. In South Africa, in 2000 and whatever year, sorry, 1990s, whatever year we started working there, what had happened was that in the central business district of Newtown in Gauteng, in Johannesburg, all the wealth and value had moved out of the city because there was only crime during the transition period. And the city had only two big banks, Standard Bank and First National Bank, which was still in the old part of the city, and everything else had moved out. And they were very keen for us to repeat what we had done some years ago in New York. And one of the things we went and said to the then government, we said, okay, why don't you mark out an arts precinct in the central business district? And I said, in 3 years' time, if you provide me good policing and great lighting on the street, I promise you in 3 years' time, I will walk across Mary Fitzgerald Square, which was one of the most crime-infested areas, with my laptop exposed at night, and I won't be mugged. That's exactly what came to pass. Restaurants moved in, galleries came in, museums came in. They converted the old rundown powerhouse into a conference center. People came in. It became buzzing. Festivals started happening there. And today it's one of the most dynamic places attracting both funding, residential development, commercial development, and everything else. Why? Because they realized that you can use the arts to be able to create this kind of wealth and value. In Egypt, when we started, during the Arab Spring Revolution, we were invited to set up a festival in Egypt. And everybody here said to me, are you, I mean, you are mad, we know that, but are you that mad to go there at this point of time? And I'd never been to Egypt, so I was like, I'm going to Egypt to see what it's like. So we went there, set up the festival. And what did it do? It created a sense of resurgence for the people there. Today, it's one of the largest festivals in that country. It brings in tourist traffic. But most importantly, it gives people that kind of belief in themselves that they can continue to address uh, their needs, their beliefs through the arts. When you look at any kind of art form, design or literature or theater or dance or music, anything, one of the most important things in that is to see where is the root to any of this. And the root always is uh, goes back to the soil of where it has emerged from. Today, Indian language writing is amongst the richest writings that we have. Yes, there's a lot of attention given to writers in English from India, but the true wealth lies in language writing. Why? Because they understand the nuance, they understand the language, they understand what makes you and me tick, they understand how to address and to refer to people. And all of this together provides a basic a fabric that weaves different ideas and different people together into one. So it's irrelevant whether what religion we are or what caste we are or which part of the country we come from. We all understand that language and literature and theater and puppetry and the visual arts and everything more, none of this needs, in a sense, any language. It crosses across all divide. Today, if you listen to Indian Ocean or if you listen to Parikrama or you listen to Mrigya or you listen to Swaratma or you listen to Raghu Dikshit, it doesn't matter whether you understand the word at all. You go with what you feel is addressing you in your heart and your soul. As I said, 1.3 billion of us, an incredible energy, 1.3 billion ideas waiting to erupt. Outside of this classroom, when you leave, each of you is like that firefly when lit on a dark night without a moon, rises up into the sky and has the capacity to illuminate us all with knowledge, with the wealth and the depth of inspiration and ideas. So I hope each of you dream your dream and you live your passion. That's the most important thing. Not what your parents have told you, but really your passion. Let that be your driver. Always remember to be rooted. Always remember to be appreciative of even the worst kind of art. Because when somebody starts doing something, they do it because they believe they have, they have a volition to do it. Writers write not necessarily to entertain. Writers write because they have a volition to write. They write because they are able to fathom the tomorrow that we are not able to fathom. People are able to create these incredible visions because that's what they do. They help us to be able to address the inner eye. So best wishes, go out and do your thing, and thank you so much.